Hey, what's up, YouTubers? It's me, Johnny from JohnnyFrom.com. Tonight, I want to talk about the 3 or 4 easiest residencies you can get in Latin America um, for almost anyone to qualify and apply for and get. And these all lead to eventual passport, and of course, they lead to residency. And these are all fairly easy to get for anyone, in that most of them don't require any proof of income. And these are visa ideas or second passport residency ideas for people who are on a budget, don't have a lot of money, and also for people who haven't done a lot of research, because I'm surprised they're not talked about more in the offshore world. But once you realize how things are done out here, you realize there's a reason why that is. Because some of these things I'm going to talk about, a lawyer will charge you five, ten, $20,000 even. You'll notice that on some websites. I won't name names, but some of these residents they'll get for you, they'll bill you 25,000 for. Anyhow, these are kind of through the back door and not well-known ways of getting residency, which will lead to a passport. The first one I want to talk about is Guatemala. Now, the reason I say Guatemala is one of the easier residencies of the world to get, and anyone can qualify for is here. Here's the reason. The benefit of Guatemala is, generally speaking, they have a visa that you can qualify for where you don't have to show or prove any income. So if you don't have a permanent income, or you don't have a retirement income, or you don't have a pension income, they have a business visa you can apply for, which will lead to eventual residency and then eventual passport. And to start off, to get the temporary residency, what you do is you go to a lawyer, a fixer, or if you want, you can do it yourself, but I don't recommend it. You first, before you leave the state, you need to get a certified copy of your police background check, a background check or police check. Whatever state you're from or city, you have to get it from there, and it's for the last 5 years. And once you get that police background check, what you do is you um, get it certified by that state. And then once you get it certified by that state, you send it to the closest embassy to your state. So if you're in Wisconsin, you would send it to Illinois, because that's where the closest embassy for the Guatemalan embassy is. And then you get it certified there. Then once you get that, you take it down to your lawyer, your fixer, or if you're doing it yourself, you take it down there as soon as possible. And you have up to 6 months to do this before the time clock runs out on that. So it's got to be within 6 months. You take that police background check that's been certified once by your local state, and then second by the Guatemalan embassy closest to the state that you live in. You take it down to your lawyer, and then what he'll do is he'll fill out the paperwork for the business visa, and he'll file all that work in the municipality, and then that visa will run you the taxes on that visa. The government fees will run you about $500 or $600, maybe less. Fees are always subject to what, I'm not sure exactly what it is now, but it's about $500, $300 to $500, I'll say. And then whatever else you're going to need for your lawyer. Typically, a lawyer will charge you $1,500 and up. There are lawyers who will charge $1,000, but sometimes it's better to find a really good lawyer, even if he charges a little more, because you'll use him for everything that you do down here. And in the end, it'll work out cheaper for you and faster and more efficient. You have less problems. Now, once you get that temporary residency, you can live on that for up to 2 years. And most people believe you can apply for your permanent residency after 2 years, but that's not really the case. You can apply after your first year of residency. That's assuming you haven't gotten in any trouble, legal trouble or anything like that. And after 1 year of residency, you can apply for the permanent residency. And right now, you could get it real fast, but except for the fact that they fired about half the employees at the migration office. So now you might have to wait up to 8 months after you apply for it, 3 to 8 months, because they haven't really hired a lot of people in there. Anyways, you apply for your permanent residency after a year of living here, assuming you didn't break any laws or get in any trouble. And what that entails is you have to get a local police check here. And then, again, your lawyer will do all that for you. And then you just pay the government fees, which this, for the permanent residence, is going to cost you quite a bit more. think it's up to 700 or 800 bucks now. And then again, like your lawyer will charge you 1,000, so it could be like 1,700 or 2,000 for the permanent residency. Keep in mind when you see here some of these fees, you have to separate out what's the fee for the government and what's the fee for your lawyer. Sometimes lawyers will charge you a lower fee or they'll quote you a lower fee without telling you what all the government fees are and taxes. So it could be quite a bit more than you would plan for. So when you're shopping around for lawyers, keep that in mind that you need to ask if the local taxes are included in that or just his fee alone. Okay, once you get the permanent residency, and assuming you haven't gotten any trouble, you should get that in about 8 months. Then you can live on a permanent residency for up to 5 years. And you don't have to become a naturalized citizens, but that's the third step you need to take after 5 years is paying that additional fee to become a naturalized citizen, and that's when you will get your passport. A lot of people talk about how there's a scam in Guatemala, but it's not really a scam. It's just most people don't realize you have to get naturalized because you can live on your permanent residency forever down here without becoming naturalized. You just won't get a passport. And then once you become a naturalized citizen, you apply for your passport, and there you go. Okay, that's the first visa, or the first country I'm talking about where you get the easiest visa without having to prove any income. And another benefit is there's no medical check, just a background check, and there's no FBI check. So if you're worried about waiting a long time for your FBI check, Guatemala is one of the last countries in Latin America where you don't have to have an FBI background check and wait 3 to 6 months for that, which can be inconvenient when you have to get all this paperwork in within usually 90 days, sometimes 6 months. It just depends on the country. Okay, now to the second country, Peru. Peru doesn't get talked about much, but it's again a country that has a lot of different visa options that many people don't realize. And one of them that's the easiest for most gringos or expats to qualify for would be the education visa. What's cool about that is you can be a young man or young woman, or you can be an old man or old woman, retirement age, and you can just follow the steps to become a student there. Now the trick is you have to get to qualify for the visa. You have to apply for and get accepted into one of their accredited schools, which really isn't that hard. And you will want to go to the nicer schools and the nicer accredited schools, because what's cool about that is all the courses they can offer all the coursework in English, not Spanish. Now that may not mean a lot to you, but if you don't speak Spanish, that can be useful and helpful. And here's what's cool about this visa. After 2 years, you become an automatic citizen. So if you study for 2 years, and assuming again you don't break any local laws there, you qualify for your passport. Now, I might get some pushback on that, but I know of one young lady who did that. In 2 years, she got her passport, and I know another older man, more well off, but he wanted a second passport in Peru, and he didn't want to jump through all the hoops to get a retiree visa because it's a little bit more expensive. And he didn't want to prove all the income and show the government where all his assets were, so he just applied for the student visa. And after 2 years, he got his passport. So there you go. And the process to become a student really isn't that hard. You just have to contact the schools. They'll give you the information. It's pretty basic. It's not really that hard, and it doesn't cost that much. And the cool thing about that is all you have to do is have your expense money to live there for 2 years, of course. And then on top of that, you have to have your fees for the university. And what are the fees for the university? Well, they're dirt cheap. If you can afford a couple grand a year, $2,000 or $3,000, you can afford to go to school almost anywhere in Latin America, even Southeast Asia for that matter. And again, you need to qualify for the student visa to become a citizen. You need to go to the accredited schools. I have to stress that not all schools down there are going to be accredited. You need to make sure you do that step. And when you go through that process of getting a degree from an accredited school, now you don't need the degree to qualify, but you need that student visa to be down there. And it's just a 2-year process, and you become automatic citizen. And what people don't realize is a lot of the other offshore handlers in the offshore world talk about how you can get a passport in 2 years in Peru. That is correct, but that's true for all the visas there. So they may or may not be promoting the student visa. I don't know, and I'm not interested in that anyways. But I'm sure their lawyer probably is pretty aware of that, and I don't know, be using that option for the person to get the passport. And a lot of these offshore dudes are charging $25,000 for that service. So if you want to just do it yourself, I recommend just doing it yourself. Normally, I would say hire a lawyer, but in this case, you may not really need a lawyer. Maybe a fixer, maybe a friend who speaks Spanish if your Spanish sucks. But in this case, you just need to you need to qualify for the visa and the residency. You need it to go to school to an accredited school. And if you do your homework and research, you'll see that's not that hard. And again, I want to stress, if you want to do this and stay out there, you're going to have enough money to live on there and pay your tuition. And also too, like I said, there's a lot of accredited schools that are really cheap tuition, but if you pay up, you can actually go to school and study in English if you want to get a degree. But of course, if you don't want to, you can study in Spanish. Your Spanish doesn't suck, and get a degree too. But again, it has to be an accredited school. Now that's Peru. So the main thing in it there is it only takes 2 years to get the Peruvian passport, and once you get the residency and you're all legally there qualified, again, it's the same in Guatemala. You can, once you have permanent residency, you can live and work, and you don't need any special permission to work or you need to get a work permit. You just away you go. Of course, you may not want to work in Peru. The wages aren't exactly stellar down there, but just for your information. Okay, the third country I want to bring up where there's a lot of controversy because I'm going to talk about a country that a lot of gringos go to. That's Ecuador. In Ecuador, there's been such a crush of recent retirees and immigrants there that there's been a lot of people who followed all the rules but didn't qualify and get their passports. So I understand there's some resentment there. And I don't have any easy solutions except for to say that hang in there and realize there's more than one way to skin a cat in Ecuador. Most of the retirees qualify and apply for and get the retiree visa. I won't get into that too much, the technical details. All I will say is if you go that route, it can be a lot harder to get your passport when you want to apply for it. Now, technically, you should be able to, but for one reason or another, which I don't want to go into here, the immigration officers look at you quite differently than if you qualify for another visa. So here is the visa I'm going to tell you about that's very easy for anyone to qualify for, and that's the professional visa. If you're a college graduate and you graduated from school in the U.S., all you need to do is provide the details of your degree to their consulate. And there's a process, and I won't go in detail to that process, but as long as your school is on that accredited list, you can qualify. Now, if your degree is not on their list of qualified schools or accredited schools, that's no problem. There's just a lengthier, longer process you have to go to get your school accredited and put on their list. And you can do all that from the United States. Again, if your Spanish is not good, you might want to hire a lawyer or a fixer. Let me just say, in this case, lawyers and fixers will charge you $200 or $300 for this service. It's really not much, and they can tell you all the exact details that you need to get and bring down here when you need to do that. Now, you're going to have a lot of stuff translated. I suggest do not translate these documents in the States. The reason is it's going to cost you an arm and a leg. And people will give you the idea that you have to. You do not have to. You can translate these documents in Ecuador, and it'll be much cheaper to do. Maybe in the States you get charged $50 a paper, and then down there $10. And there's a lot of translations involved in this process. And you'll notice I didn't get into all the details on police checks, certified checks, and all that. So because it's a professional visa, you will have to get the FBI background check. That's another disappointment in Ecuador. I think in 2015 or 2016, they finally officially implemented a law where you have to have an FBI background check. Now, some people will tell me, well, you had to do that before, and I would just say, maybe. I mean, some lawyers seem to get their clients fired without that, but now not anymore. You need an official FBI background check. So you'll need that, of course, certified and apostillized. And you also will need to make sure your university degree is on the accredited list that the government has. And if it's not, then you need to jump through the further hoop of getting it accredited, which is a pain in the ass, but not impossible. And let me just add this. And once you qualify and get it and get all the papers, you bring them all down there, and your lawyer or fixer, whoever, will help you take you around to all the offices you need to go to. And it's quite a few. And if you've never done it or you don't speak Spanish, I highly recommend spending the $200 or $300 you'll need to spend to get a lawyer to do all that for you and go around with you. It's really worth the money, and it'll save you a lot of time. I can't stress that enough. If you don't have a fixer or a lawyer in these kinds of things, People at these embassies will give you, and the migration offices, I should say, will give you the runaround. They may or may not give you the right information. They may or may not intentionally give you the right information. They'll just assume you know everything without telling you, and then you come back and go there frustrated because they'll keep telling you all these details you didn't think you needed to do, but then you did, but no one told you to begin with. Anyways, $200 can save you a lot of frustration and grief. So I just want to stress, for Ecuador, you need to get the professional visa. All you need is a college degree that's on their list of accredited schools. If it's not, then you need to jump through the further hoop of getting it on their list, which again, it's not hard, but I don't want to go into details here. You just contact the embassy in Ecuador and they'll give you that, or contact a lawyer down there. There's lawyers that specialize in that. It's very, very a simple process. It just takes a little time. And then you take all the papers down there, and then you get them. You take them to the government various offices where you need to take them to, and then you get the residency that way. And then once you get your papers stamped and all that, that's when the clock starts. And 3 years after that, you can, in theory, qualify for Ecuadorian passport. And I'm pretty confident you'll get it. A lot of people say no, but if you do that instead of the retiree visa, you'll get your passport. Okay, last but not least is a passport program most people are aware of, so I won't go into real deep details, but just for the scope of this conversation, I want to include it in just in case people are not aware. But if you need a really easy passport to get to a residency, and you for whatever reasons you don't want to live in Central America and go for the Guatemalan passport, which will allow you to live and work, well, not work, but to live in any of the C4 countries, and it's so easy to get, then you might want to consider South America. And in South America, in Paraguay, they have a passport program where most people are familiar with the details, but you're going to have to get the FBI background check, and you're going to have to deposit between $5,000 and $6,000. Now, I say 5,000 or 6,000 because the guarani, in my understanding, is devalued recently against the dollar a little bit, so maybe less than 5,000, but where previously the currency appreciated against the dollar, so it was a little over 5,000, but somewhere in the range of $5,000 or $6,000, you're going to have to deposit in the bank, and you're going to have to be willing to keep that money in the bank for a while. And that is really, really a simple process. You just have to pay the lawyer fees, which can be about $2,000, and you have to get your FBI background check, and I think you have to get a birth certificate. And you just have to fly down there, file the papers. You have your lawyer can do that, or the fixer, and then you're going to have to come back when your ID is ready. Now, of course, if you want to live down there, you can just stay down there and you won't have to fly back. But that's why I emphasize Guatemala, because if you don't particularly want to live in Latin America or in South America, it's expensive to go down there to file the papers. Although you can do it, you only have to stay a certain amount of time in the country. That's why a lot of people go for it. And but it's expensive flying down there if you're from Europe or from North America. And also, too, as you might have heard, it's not necessarily a guaranteed passport unless you use the right lawyers, in my opinion, because a lot of the other lawyers, they're cutting corners and not doing things correctly. So when you need all your paperwork to become naturalized, that's where people think in Guatemala you get scammed, but it's because they don't have the original paperwork documents, especially the taxes. You have to prove you pay these taxes. You have to have the original receipts. So to get that naturalization, that's why they say it's a scam. No, you need those original, excuse me, taxes and the receipts you got for paying them to qualify for the naturalization. And it's the same in Paraguay. And in Paraguay, you need all that. And if you don't have that, you might be disappointed. And some of the low-end bottom feeder fixers don't tell you that, and they may not even pay the tax, even though they said they did and gave you fake paperwork. That's why there's so many problems in some of these countries. You really can get these passports, but you really do have to go by the book and not get the cheapest lawyer or fixer, because they tend to cut corners and not tell you, and then you find out later. It can lead to grief if you find out later, and then you're kind of in a homicidal rage, and you're pretty pissed off because you made that foolish decision to go with the lowest cost lawyer. And then just one more thing, you don't have to live in Paraguay constantly to get the passport, whereas in Ecuador, you really have to stay there. I think, if I remember right, you have to be there at least 9 months out of the year, the first 2 years, and then after that, the third year, you can be out of the country, I believe, 6 months without disqualifying residency. And in Guatemala, I forgot to mention, but you have to be there at least 1 year one day a year to keep your residency in good standing. That is with the temporary residency. Now, once you get the permanent residency, that doesn't. Yeah, I think it does apply. But once you get that, well, I might be wrong on that. I'll have to get back to you on that. But once you get the permanent residency, I think you're pretty much in. But in any case, even if you do have to stay there one day a year, that's not hard to manage. Whereas in Ecuador, you have to be there. I think, if I remember right, they're starting to enforce that law where you got to be there for the first 2 years, 9 months, and then after 9 months, you can leave the country for 2 or 3 months without losing your residency. And in Paraguay, that's not the case. It's like Guatemala. You don't have to be there hardly at all, and you can travel around, take care of your business or whatever. But what all these visas are nice for, if you want to live somewhere, if you just want to have a residency to fall back on, a legal place to live, legal place to throw some money. These are some of the easiest to qualify. In all three cases of these residencies, you don't have to prove any income. You don't have to have any pension. So if you're a young person or an older person who has a low pension, you don't need to prove any of that. Maybe you don't want to like show these governments where all your assets are anyways. You just want to either make a deposit or qualify for the professor or the business visa. And a lot of these countries have these. It's just not well known or advertised by fixers. And they like to go down the path where they can collect the biggest fee for you, which may not be in your interest, but it's in there. So realize these aren't really any great secrets or anything. It's just the way the system's set up. And also, too, you can't expect them to really cut their throat. But now with the internet and the information getting out there, it's going to get harder and harder for this information not to get out there and be useful and available. But despite the internet, still people are not aware of these things. And if you doubt what I'm saying, all you have to do is talk to a lawyer. And also keep in mind when you talk to a lawyer, and then you try to confirm everything on a government website, the immigration website, sometimes that information is not updated. Sometimes it's outdated. Sometimes the documents were in Spanish and they're interpreted into English when they're translated, so they don't get the right translation. So you may not have a good idea of what they meant. So that's why there can be so many conflicting stories and information when you're trying to confirm all this information at the embassy. All I can say is you need to find a trustworthy lawyer so you can get the real information, and a lawyer who's done it many times, and then you can more easily rest assured you'll get what you want. And then of course you want to talk to other expats and who they used and kind of get references that way. And you'll find out who the scam artists are and who the honest people are, and you'll find out it's much cheaper in the long run to pay a lawyer a little bit more than some of the low end bottom feeder lawyers and fixers who cut corners and they say they pay all the taxes, but then they don't. Then you find out when you try to apply for your passport, you don't have the original documents. You never did pay those fees, and now you're not going to get your passport. And now, not only that, now you've just advertised to the government you're in the country legally, and they may or may not allow you to get clean with the law and all that. Usually they do, but not always. And that's why I say go with a well-known quantity lawyer. And that's about all I have to say about it. So let me know what you think. Leave a comment. Subscribe. And then again, if you want, check out my website at johnnyfrom.com. All right, thanks.